Hello, church family. I'm excited to go over this passage with you today. We've got an interesting one here. So we're looking at these four passages: Genesis 17, 1 through 7, and 15 to 16, Psalm 22, verses 23 to 31, Romans 4, verses 13 to 25, and Mark 8, verses 31 to 38. And the passages deal, in my mind, with this particular common theme, which is a thread you'll find throughout the Bible about God's interaction with humanity, and specifically the way in which God is unfair to humanity. I know this is a funny word to use in this context to say that he's unfair, but it is applicable in the sense that he does not deal with us fairly or in proportion to our actions. And in fact, this is a common theme that Jesus even talks about. He tells a parable about a man who hired men to work in his farm, and he hired some at the earliest hour, and every few hours he would go back and find more men loafing about until the very end of the day, when there was only an hour or two left in the day, and he goes and finds some more men who don't have anything to do. And he says, "You guys don't have anything to do?" And they said, "No, no one would hire us." And he says, "Well, come and work. I'll pay. This is what I'll pay you." And each group of men he told, "This is what I will pay you, one day's wage." And so when everyone came, some of those men saw these guys who had showed up at the very last hour and saw them get paid first, and they got a day's wage. And they thought, "Oh, well, I was promised a day's wage, but this guy just got paid a day's wage for working an hour, so I'm gonna make some big money today." And when they get only a day's wage, they complain. They say, "What is this? I worked all day, and those guys worked for an hour." And the owner's response is, "I promised to pay you a day's wage. It's what you agreed to work for, just like them. I don't see what the problem is." And this is how God treats humanity, that he does not show favoritism or partiality, even when we think he should. That is, there is no trophy for being a Christian the longest. There is no trophy for coming to know God earlier. The rewards that you reap in this life are significant, and those matter. But God's blessing, God's welcome, is the same on someone who comes to know him in their final days as it is for someone who comes to know him at the age of 5. That blessing and welcome are the same for all of them. And indeed, what we see in these passages is the same idea, that Abraham is given this promise that he will be the father of many nations. He'll be a blessing to the world. So God says, "I will bless you so you can bless others." Well, in Psalm, we hear this pronouncement of praise over God. And one of the things for which he is praised is how he draws all the nations. All the nations are welcome under his umbrella. Romans tells us that God's great love reaches out for all people, that he welcomes all without any favoritism. And in Mark 8, we see Jesus declaring that anyone who will give up their life will receive it back. And so each of these passages speaks to the universality, the immensity, the openness, the ubiquity, the totalness of God's redemptive plan. That God intends to rescue any and everyone who will come to him. And he doesn't have a time limit set on it. He doesn't snatch it back if you're too slow. He doesn't show favorites to those who come early. But he wants to reach everyone. And this should inform our way of thinking. Because as humans, we tend to naturally categorize better, not as good, mediocre, not so great, really bad. We put things in categories, and we rank them, and we line them up, and we compare. How am I doing compared to this person? I'm better in this area, or I can't believe that they behave like that still, when they've been a Christian that long, or whatever it is. We compare, we rank, we sort, and we tend to sort of subconsciously assume that God does the same thing. And the truth is that God does not. And that ranking can get us into trouble when we begin to look at people and say, "Too far gone. God's grace can never reach them." Or Look what a mess they've made of their life. There's no hope for them now. But that's not how God thinks about it. God's standing there with his door open saying, come on in. There's still time. I've got an empty table or empty spot at my table just for you. And so we are invited to behave the same way, to welcome and accept people who are very different from us, to welcome and accept people without judging and comparing, and to live our own lives without trying to measure up, because God's unfairness is reaching us too. We don't deserve his grace. We don't deserve his blessing. And we can't deserve it. There's nothing that we could do to make ourselves worthy of it. And so we should live as those grateful. C.S. Lewis said it like this, that a Christian should be just one beggar telling another beggar where he found some bread. So friends, I hope this week that you will tell some other beggars where you found some bread. Have a great week.